I don't know. I don't think Isaiah's a millennial. I'm calling Gen Z.
It depends on what you look at. Okay, Boomer classifies me as a millennial.
Okay, all right. Well,
Millennial at heart.
nonetheless.
Unless he has TikTok.
Right. Well,
No, I have to take a vote.
nonetheless, one thing that has made his job a whole lot easier is the fact that Craig announced this, and now he gets to watch these memes every day.
Oh, we should do a 24-hour meme stream.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, let's move on. We've got Noi Mahoney joining us, and we're going to talk a little bit about the city of Houston and imposing restrictions on truck routes within the city. Obviously, they had a major boom there with the activity through the Panama Canal, of course, that we talked about with Greg Miller, as more ships came to the Gulf Coast, and lots more traffic headed through Houston, as well as, of course, Laredo, coming up through Mexico as well there. Noi, thanks so much for joining us. This is an interesting problem to have at this point, knowing that a lot more cargo is coming through, and now all of a sudden the city decides probably and rightly that it wants to keep large trucks out of neighborhoods and put them on major roads.
Yeah, that's right. Good morning. Houston, Texas could soon become the largest U.S. city to pass a broad truck route plan that would limit where tractor trailers can travel. City officials are proposing a regulation that would limit tractor trailers, commercial trucks, to main roads while banning them on many smaller city streets. The aim of the regulation is to improve roadway safety and quality of life in Houston, officials told me.
And Noi, usually with these things, there's always some type of unintended consequence. Is there anything that's going to start to overload another area in Houston with more trucks if this starts to have more restrictions on where they can't go?
Yeah, I spoke to Jefferson Walker of J.H. Walker Trucking Company, and that company is an oil field transportation provider, and he said, Houston is a city that doesn't have zoning laws. A lot of people that don't live in Texas don't know this about Houston, Texas, but they don't have zoning laws. So what that means is you can have a commercial business, such as a trucking company, right next to or even in a residential area. And Mr. Walker told me that, because of this and because Houston sprawls so much, trucking companies like his have customers in pretty much every part of the city. So he's worried that, if you start banning some of these smaller city streets for trucks, it's going to, have to cause his trucks to take longer to, deliver goods, go through other parts of the city. And these designated truck routes could become crowded with trucks, on a daily basis because all trucks are required to use these specific routes. So he's worried how it could affect his operations and service to his customers.
No, I took a look at the map of the city of Houston, and not only, as you mentioned, no zoning laws, but also they've got a lot of pockets within the kind of exterior or perimeter border within that don't necessarily have to adhere, I would think, to a city ordinance that goes along that as well. So this doesn't necessarily affect the entire geographical contiguous area, correct?
That's correct. It's a proposal from the city of Houston, so it would only be within Houston city limits. And as you mentioned, Houston sprawls so much. It's a sort of a mega city, really. I think the population of the greater Houston area is almost 8 million, or it's getting close to 8 million. So it's a very populated city, very dense city, and you have these pockets of industry right next to residential neighborhoods. And I should mention that city officials in Houston told me the proposal for this ordinance originated from complaints from neighborhoods that trucks were, using their city streets too often, in their opinion. So what's going to happen in the spring is the city has a pilot program they're going to do with this truck route plan in a particular neighborhood. And after that pilot program ends, which could be sometime in 2024, they're looking to, make it official or pass this ordinance for all of the city.
And Noi, we're looking at the other part of really routing more traffic through other areas. The other thing I think about is the wear and tear on some of the infrastructure. Do you know the state of the Houston infrastructure, if they can start to take heavier traffic in certain areas, or what the infrastructure funding looks like?
That's a great question. I don't spend a lot of time driving around Houston. As you know, it's a very big city, and I don't want to be stuck in traffic for hours. But one of the things Mr. Walker did tell me also was, trucking companies already pay, fuel tax, diesel tax and heavy truck taxes. That go towards infrastructure such as roads, and one of his concerns is trucking companies are already paying taxes to use these roads, and now you're telling trucking companies they can't use roads which are being funded in a large part by diesel taxes, fuel taxes. The average, like I think he told me, one 5-axle truck pays about $4,500 in taxes per year, which is about 50 times more than an average car owner pays in fuel taxes. So he's worried about just the unfairness of trucking companies being taxed but not being able to use many of these roads that they need to get their products to customers.
No, just to clarify, you mentioned the pilot program and what that could possibly entail. Is there a timeline past that? If that were to appease lawmakers in the city of Houston, they want to go ahead and do this, is there some sort of an idea of when this could be enacted? And like to Anthony's point, be ready with the infrastructure if indeed it is needed to be improved to take on, have these highways take on the extra added of what the weight of these new trucks is going to bring.
The pilot program, what city officials in Houston told me, is going to take place in spring, this spring coming up. And after that, they will make recommendations based on how, the pilot program did. And I should mention that the pilot program is going to be in a neighborhood called the City Gas neighborhood, which is one of the neighborhoods where a lot of the complaints about trucks originated, apparently from what city officials have said. So it'll be interesting to see how it works in that particular neighborhood and what recommendations come out of the pilot program. But it seems like sometime in 2024 is when we could see this ordinance pass or not pass it, or even maybe get reconfigured just based on what happens in the spring.
And Noah, you also have another story talking about a new terminal opening up in the Gulf. Can you tell us about this company?
That is correct. Off the top of my head, I can't remember the name of the company, but I believe it.
Is it DUGRO?
DUGRO, that's right. They're opening a new terminal on the Gulf Coast. It is to serve, I think, e-commerce goods not e-commerce goods, heavy equipment, commercial equipment, and they're part of what you mentioned earlier, the growth of the Gulf Coast, companies needing industrial equipment. And the terminal, I believe it's about 50,000 square feet or something in that line, but it's going to be for commercial equipment, people who need industrial equipment because of all this construction going on with, new companies moving to the area, new construction going on, and it'll be towards those kinds of customers.
And continuing on, one other story that you had, of course, was the fact that Laredo, no surprise to anybody, is still on top in terms of an import position, number one, coming into the United States. As you look at that over time, is that actually starting to spread? Are they getting some distance between number two, or how are they playing that role in terms of, is it really improving? Is it stabilized? Or is it perhaps shrinking as others perhaps get closer to them?
Well, Mexico and Laredo, as you mentioned, are the top. Mexico is the top trade partner, and Port of Laredo is the top international gateway. It is still pretty close. So, Mexico is number one, but there's not a huge gap between number two, which is Canada. And in the case of Laredo, Texas, as an international gateway, they've also been number one, I think, for 6 or 7 months straight now. Ahead of the Port of Los Angeles and Chicago O'Hare, but it's not a gap. It's not a lead that's widening. It's sort of they're doing good. They're holding on. They've been consistent, but Canada is still sort of giving Mexico a run for its money as top U.S. trade partner, and Port of Los Angeles and Chicago O'Hare, they're not going anywhere either. So it's going to be a close race every month.
No, certainly no shortage of stories happening there in the borderlands. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Before we let you go, are there any trends that you're looking at going into 2024 that you're going to be expecting within the region?
It'll be interesting to see, for how fresh produce does. I'm keeping an eye on that. Fresh produce from Mexico and other South American countries. Parts of Mexico has had problems with drought, and other Latin American countries also had problems with drought. So it'll be interesting to see how that affects, the flow of fresh produce coming into the winter and spring.
Could be very interesting, of course, over the winter months there as well. Noi, thanks so much for joining us, and enjoy your weekend.
Thank you.